Hello and welcome to PGurus channel. I'm your host Sri Iyer. Today I have the pleasure of Dr. Tathagata Roy's company. Dr. Roy, welcome to PGurus channel. Namaskar.
Thank you. Namaskar.
Sir, the last time we had a conversation because of technical difficulties, our viewers did not get to see you. But today we are fortunate. You are back in Kolkata now, and you are no an ex-governor. You're back in your home territory. Welcome back, and we hope that this is one of several hangouts that we are going to have on everything intellectual. But today we are going to talk mostly about Bengal. Sir, my first question to you is reading about the incidents of violence in Bengal, especially political violence, it looks almost like you're reading about a place like Somalia or Mali or Sudan or Libya, Syria. Why is that so, sir?
That is because, and this is my personal opinion, mind you, that is because Trinamul Congress apparently, I say apparently, and these words are very important, apparently has taken a policy of terrorizing BJP workers. And this is an inescapable conclusion because of the number of murders, the number of unnatural deaths, I should say, number of unnatural deaths that have taken place. And the alacrity with which the police have come forward to say that all these are cases of suicide or cases of uh, village fights, familial dissensions, stuff like that. Normally, the police take their own time, a few days, to come to such conclusions. But here we find that they're jumping to these conclusions literally and producing a lot of papers, whatever, what have you, in support of their conclusions. So that is driving me to this conclusion. And um, I would say that in this, as well as in several other aspects, they are copying their predecessors. That is the Trinamul Congress, step for step, line by line, because uh, I can see it. Mamata Banerjee has figured out that if the CPM could stay in power for 34 years this way, I can also do it, and she is doing it.
You bring up an excellent observation, Dr. Roy. Trinamool Congress came to power by being left of the left. The Singur, if you think about the Singur incident of Tata. So they had to take a position even more extreme than the then left government to come to power. And people tell us that the Ghoul Squad that used to belong to communists has now shifted base to the Mamata Congress, and this kind of stuff it has been happening for a while. I mean, surely she must be also polarizing on her own, isn't it? Do you see any end to this violence?
No, I don't see any end to this violence. You see, the way I look at it is that she's essentially a street fighter. And any political situation, she converts it into a street fight so that it's in her specialty. And uh, Singur provided her with an unique opportunity for doing so. Actually, Singur was the communists who had first conceived of Singur under the stewardship of Buddhadev Bhattacharya, uh, were not all that innocent. See, during communist rule between 1977 and 2011, approximately 60,000 industries in West Bengal have shut shop. And why has that happened? Because the communists wanted disorder, the communists wanted unemployment, the communists did not want prosperity. I'll just give you an example, which is slightly a bit of a digression, but it will give you an insight into what the communists, the mindset of communists. See, there was a gentleman called Amal Datta who was an MP and who happened to be the nephew of Jyoti Basu. He later on left CPM and left politics also, but for a while he was an MP from the constituency of Diamond Harbour, and he had also been the chairman of the Public Accounts Committee of the Parliament. He had once, but he had some kind of stuff in his head, some bee in his bonnet, so to say, whereby he had nurtured some intention of doing good to his constituency. So he told me this story that he had once gone to Bangalore on some work relating to the Public Accounts Committee and found that uh, horticulturists, people who cultivate flowers, they were making a lot of money in Karnataka because, particularly in winter, flowers don't grow in Europe, and there's a huge demand for flowers. As a result of that, the flowers could sell at a high price. And the Karnataka government had made arrangements for airlifting the flowers from Bangalore. So he got an idea, why not do it in my own constituency? So he went back to Diamond Harbour, got the soil tested, and found out that it could be done in Diamond Harbour also. So he spoke to his party that I want to do this kind of thing. The party said, has the comrade gone off his rocker? He said, why? He was quite surprised. He said, why? He said, are you aware that if you do this kind of thing, then there'll be prosperity? And if there is prosperity, then who will come to the communists? So we want lack of prosperity. We want the people to be impoverished. We want the people to be in difficulties so that they keep coming, keep running to the party office for something or other always happening. This will give you an insight into what the communists did. And Mamata Banerjee has copied their thing. It is not as if Mamata Banerjee is no fool. It is not as if she did not know that by driving out this auto industry from Singur, she would be doing untold harm to the state. But she did it because she knew that this is one thing that she is good at. And by doing this, she would be besting the communists at their own game. And thereafter, she would be able to capture power on this platform.
Sir, I
Does
have a
that make
question.
sense?
Yes, it does, sir. I have one simple question. What
Yes,
has Mamata Banerjee have to show now? Almost 10 years of rule of hers.
yes,
What does she
yes.
have to show for the 10 years that she has been in power?
Well, there are half a dozen Shris, like Kanya Shri, Swastha Shri, uh, Cycle Shri. I lose count of them. Every little cockeyed idea that she adds a Shri after it. And after adding that Shri, she rules out the application of any of the central schemes to the state. Say, for instance, Ayush. Ayush was a program for universal health launched by the central government. But she, in her own head, she had reasoned that if people get the advantage of Ayush, then they will get inclined to the Modi government. So he said that we will not apply Ayush. On the other hand, we will apply something called Swastha Sathi, Shastha Sathi, as we say it in Bengali. Shastha Sathi, which is going to be more liberal, more people friendly than Ayush. And she persisted in it. As a result of this, people were deprived of the extremely useful, extremely people friendly scheme of Ayush. That's the way she works. She has distributed a lot of cycles to girl students. I have personally heard from a number of girls who have got these cycles that many of these cycles are not functioning. Some of them don't have a ball bearing. Some of them have the chain. Some of them the chain breaks in no time. This kind of thing. Whole lot of how should I put it, very populist measures, which in the long run don't serve the people, but in the short run they get some political dividend for Mamata Banerjee. She has had this kind of thing. And she has made certain very ridiculous comments from time to time, like, why don't the people of this state make chops? Chops, in Bengal or in other parts of India, presumably, are not the same as the chops that you understand in the West. What goes for chops in India is a sort of a little bit of mincemeat covered by some potato, boiled potato covering, and the whole thing fried
It's fried.
and covered with biscuit, that kind of thing. So she has said that why not this? Why shouldn't people do this? Why shouldn't people go into making dalmot instead of running after jobs? So she has she has been forced to face a lot of flack for these harebrained schemes, but she persists. She goes on talking about these things.
So one killing really rankled the conscience of the nation. A
Yes,
sitting MLA is hanged in full public view, and
yes.
then the news just dies away, and it is business as usual. What is the action that the government has taken? I mean, this is an MLA. This is a political killing. There is nothing more political killing than the killing of a sitting MLA, sir. What has this government done?
The name of the gentleman is Devendranath Roy. He was the MLA from a place called Hemtabad. He was found hanging, and the police, as I mentioned, with great alacrity, in a matter of hours, came along with the conclusion that this was a case of suicide. You know, a little while back, I was telling you that Mamata Banerjee follows the CPM step for step, line by line. I had myself seen an identical case during the CPM's times when I had just become party president. That was in 2002. A man called Naranarayan Noshkor, he was burned to death. He was found burned to death in a place called Palad, which is in the district of Bardhaman. So at that time, we didn't have much work. It was a small party. So I personally went there and I met the SP and I said, what happened? Then he said, oh, it's clearly a case of suicide. I said, how can a person commit suicide by tying himself to a lamppost and then setting fire on himself? Why should it take so much trouble? In the countryside, one can commit suicide by drinking pesticides. That is the most common way of committing suicide. So this doesn't seem to be very believable. Can you show me the Surat Hal report, which is the inquest report? He showed me the postmortem report. I said, can you show me the inquest report? He said, no. I said, why not? He said, no. No reasons given. It is Mamata is following in their footsteps, the footsteps of the CPM, and she is doing exactly this, what the CPM used to do.
Sir, the 2019 Lok Sabha elections, the
Yes,
BJP performed impressively. I have to say that word, impressively.
yes, of course, of
Now,
course.
so one of the things that one of the reasons for their success is allegedly that they were able to polarize the vote, saying that there is a demographic time bomb ticking in West Bengal.
Yes.
Sir, you were a governor there. Now you're back. You are a man of numbers. Can you please share with our viewers how the demographics of West Bengal are shifting? And should there be a concern for the rest of the country as far as what is happening in West Bengal shouldn't become a template for the rest of the country?
This calls for a slightly longish answer,
That's fine,
and
sir. Go ahead.
I'd
Yeah.
request you to hold your patience. You see, you must try to understand the history of West Bengal. In 1947, towards the beginning of 1947, when Jinnah was clamoring for partition, sometime in March, I think the Congress accepted partition. When the Congress accepted partition of the country, Shama Prasad Mukherjee, who was the founder of the Bharatiya Jansangh, which is the precursor of the forerunner of the Bharatiya Janata Party, which rules the country today, Shama Prasad Mukherjee said that if you are going to partition the country, you must also partition the state of Bengal so that the Hindu majority areas of the state of Bengal become attached to India and they do not have to live under Muslim domination in Pakistan. Now, this was very vehemently resisted by Jinnah and a whole lot of other people, and including some congressmen who either did not understand the implications or who, out of some ulterior motive, wanted the whole of Bengal to go to Pakistan. But Shama Prasad Mukherjee won the game. He got the support of the Congress also, and he created West Bengal by partitioning Bengal, which was really a homeland for Bengali Hindus. As a matter of fact, today I, a Bengali Hindu, can sit as a proud Indian citizen with my head held high, only because Dr. Shyama Prasad Mukherjee did it. He created West Bengal as a homeland for Bengali Hindus. Now, at that time, there were a large number of Muslims still in Bengal, and a large number of Hindus left in East Bengal, which eventually became East Pakistan and subsequently Bangladesh. Now, at that time, the proportion of Hindus in East Bengal or East Pakistan was roughly 29%. Now, Pakistan began a conscious policy of persecuting them with a view to drive them out to India. And in order to do this, they carried out a horrible draconian policy of rape, arson, murder, what have you. And as a result of that, there was a mass exodus of Hindus from East Bengal to West Bengal. Side by side with that, one could have expected that there would be some uh, reciprocal movement of Muslims from West Bengal to East Bengal, but it didn't take place. It took place in Punjab. That is a very fundamental difference between the partition and the refugee movement in the two states. In Punjab, all the Hindus and Sikhs from Pakistani Punjab moved to the Indian Punjab, and all the Muslims from Indian Punjab moved to Pakistani Punjab. Whereas in the case of Bengal, it was a unidirectional movement. Only the Hindus moved from East Pakistan to India, and the Muslims stayed put where they were, except a few here and there people who were in government service or very moneyed people who were worried about getting grooms from their daughters, stuff like that. Very minuscule, very tiny proportion of the whole set of people. Then uh, the situation in 1947, immediately after partition, was that in East Bengal, there was about 29% population of Hindus. In West Bengal, there was a 20% population of Muslims. Now, as I said, over the 1940s, 1950s, the beginning of the 1960s, there was mass exodus of Hindus from East Bengal to West Bengal, as a result of which the proportion of Hindus in East Bengal went on reducing. In today's Bangladesh, it has come down to about 8 or 9% from what used to be 29% in 1947. Of course, in this, the procreation of the Muslims also played a part. But the crux of the thing, the real reason why this proportion was changed was the exodus of Hindus. As opposed to that, the proportion of Muslims, which was 20% in 1947, you'd be surprised to know it has gone up to 30% in West Bengal. From 20% in 1947, the proportion of Muslims in West Bengal has gone up to 30%. Now, why has this taken place? This has taken place because of two reasons. One is, of course, procreation. I said Muslim religious men, they actively encourage their flock to have more children, more children, more children. And they also say that birth control or family planning is against the tenets of Islam. But the bulk of it is due to huge infiltration. There has been infiltration of Muslims from Bangladesh into India, principally because Bangladesh as a country simply couldn't hold its population. Bangladesh is the most densely populated country in the world. If you leave aside the city states like Singapore or Hong Kong or Macau, Bangladesh is the most densely populated country in the world. India has a population density of about 380 per square kilometer, which is high but not all that high. The low countries in Europe, Belgium, Netherlands, they have that kind of population density. But uh, uh, for India, it is 380 per square kilometer. As opposed to that, Bangladesh has 1100 per square kilometer. 1100 per square kilometer. And it's uniformly distributed. So the country simply couldn't hold its population and it started leaking to India. Now, the quote unquote seculars in West Bengal, they saw in this infiltration a vote bank and they encouraged this infiltration with the result that all the Muslims who trickled into West Bengal, they have all been given voter cards and everything else. Many of them have got even passports. The Hindus who came as refugees until 1971 had become citizens. After that, they were in limbo. And it's only after the passage of the Citizenship Amendment Act, which recently became law, only after the passage of that act have these people, the Hindus, hapless Hindus of East Bengal, are assured that they will not be deported back to East Pakistan or, Bangladesh. So this is the situation on the ground now. And as a result of this demographic change, as I mentioned, from the overall population of Muslims in West Bengal going up from 20% to 30%. It should have gone down because of the exodus of Hindus from East Bengal. Instead of that, it has gone up. There are 3 districts in West Bengal which have become Muslim majority. Murshidabad district was Muslim, marginally Muslim majority to begin with. Now it has become substantially Muslim majority. Malda, North Dinajpur, these 2 districts have also become Muslim majority. And several other districts are on the margin. Even districts in Bihar, which are separated from Bangladesh only by a tiny sliver of land on the of West Bengal. Some districts like that, like Katihar and Kishanganj, they have also become Muslim majority. So these are the principal demographic changes that are taking place. The demand, you could expect a demand for a sort of an Anschluss. You know what Anschluss is? the merging of Germany and Austria
Yeah.
before the Second World War, you could expect a sort of demand for an Anschluss between the Muslim majority districts of West Bengal and Muslim majority country of Bangladesh. It has only not happened because there is a center and there is an army which is all India, which is not run only by Bengalis. So this is the real danger. This is the real danger. And in this, there is a lesson for other states of the country, notably Assam, which also has a very large border with Bangladesh, to make sure that their demography doesn't change. Incidentally, Assam. If you look at the map of Assam, it is got three prongs. Okay, one prong is Lower Assam, one prong is Upper Assam, and the third prong is the Barak Valley. The Lower Assam is, some of the districts in Lower Assam have become Muslim majority. Upper Assam is still largely free, but even among them, among those districts, Upper Assam is quite a bit far away from Bangladesh. But even among those districts, some like Noga district, Nogong, that has become Muslim majority. And the southernmost part, which has the largest interface or international border with Bangladesh, it has become solidly Muslim majority. There are three districts in the Barak Valley, the southern part, that is Karimganj, Hailakandi, and Kachar. Karimganj and Hailakandi have become Muslim majority. Kachar is marginally Hindu majority still, but only for Silchar town. If you leave aside Silchar town, the rest of Kachar is Muslim majority. So there you have a situation, we have a time bomb ticking, and it is only the BJP who has realized this. As a matter of fact, back in 1988, some BJP leaders had gone to see Mr. Jyoti Basu to warn him of what was happening, this kind of infiltration. Jyoti Basu, in a great theatrical move, he looked under his desk and he said, "What? I can't see any infiltrator over here." Those people said that we have not come here to play games with you. Namaskar, we are going. And then they left. And only now people have started realizing that this is a danger, but still adequate steps are not being taken. Even Rohingyas do not belong to Bangladesh. They belong to Myanmar. And they are unwelcome in Bangladesh because a large number of them have been radicalized. These Rohingyas who are Muslims, who are unwelcome in Bangladesh, even they have trickled into West Bengal and they are being given refuge on account of some wishy-washy, quote-unquote, secular argument, human rights argument. They are refugees. They are not refugees. They are not refugees. If at all they are refugees into Bangladesh. If in West Bengal is to accommodate Rohingyas, why should it not accommodate the Hutus of Rwanda or Tutsis of Rwanda, one of the two? They were a victim of genocide. Or the genocide-driven people of South Sudan. So I've tried to explain it as far as possible within the short time, but I think from that you got an idea of what a big problem we are up against.
Yes, sir. And my follow up question is along the same lines.
Yes.
If you look at West Bengal, there is a sense that the rural Bengali is fed up with the violent attacks that are coming from the TMC goons and the illegal Bangladesh immigrants. And they probably have decided to boot the TMC out. But the Bhadra Purush of the town and city dwelling intellectuals are still sitting on the fence. How will you explain this phenomenon, and what more will they need get to get convinced that they do not need 5 more years of the current regime?
See, it is not quite right that the town dwelling intellectuals are sitting on the fence. Quite a number of them are also convinced of the problem. they are only not convinced that, um, how should I put it? Uh, or they need to be convinced that the alternative government that the BJP is going to give them is going to deliver the goods. When they displaced the CPIM, they thought that Mamata Banerjee was going to be a better proposition than the CPIM. She proved them totally wrong. She proved herself to be worse than the CPIM, if at all, if such a thing is possible. So the intellectual class, urban intellectual class, who are skeptics to begin with, they are suffering from this doubt. Apart from that, there is another aspect to it. You see, the urban class has to be addressed in a particular way. As a matter of fact, the rural class have also got to be addressed in a particular way. You have to appeal to their intellect. Bengalis set a lot of store by intellect, and blind faith or caste, things like that, these have very little place in the politics of Bengal. So even rural folks and very much more urban folks need to be addressed in their intellect, which is somehow not getting done so far. So that might be one reason. You see, I'm not very definite about this because for 5 years I was away from the state and I've just come back 2 weeks back, just 2 weeks back. So all that I can say is that in these 2 weeks, this is the impression that I have formed.
Well, sir, I'm sure as you start interacting with people, you will see more and more, you'll be able to get a more accurate picture of what's going on. Now, I want to bring your attention to something that we at PGurus published. In fact, you'll be shocked to know that Mr. Azam Khan's son has two religions and three birth certificates in different cities.
I'm not surprised.
So he's also a Hindu, he's also a Muslim, he's also born in two different dates. So the whole tamasha, if you look at it, seems to be aimed at the way India goes to elections. India goes it in phases, right? So you could, in theory, have two birth certificates by virtue of which you have two votes in two different cities, and it gives you enough time to cast your vote in one. You probably found a way to erase the mark ink, and then you go to the other place and cast it again. So basically, what I am expressing here is a fear that the minority is trying to appear larger than what it is. So there is a fair amount of fraud. This is actually not the polling list fraud. I'm talking about this is legitimate because the guy will say, I have a birth certificate by virtue of which he'll get his voter registration card and so on and so forth. Unless the voter registration card, the voter rolls are reconciled with the Aadhaar card, where Aadhaar has at least one biometric, which will at least, weed out a lot of these duplicates. There's a big process. Now, this is just the technical fraud. I'm also hearing that in Bengal, the polling lists are also compromised. And they've heard of a lot of Rohingyas and illegal Bangladeshi immigrants getting citizenship rights and voting rights and so on. How would you start weeding these things out? You have to first come to power before you can even work on that. What are your thoughts on that?
See, this is not something new in Bengal. In West Bengal, the CPIM had been practicing this for a long time, since the 1980s. They had a pet union among the government employees, which was called the Coordination Committee. And this Coordination Committee selected those government employees who were going to be in election duty, either for preparing the electoral rolls or for conducting the elections, that sort of thing. Now, Sheshan, when he was the chief election commissioner, he had tried very hard and partially succeeded to stop this practice. And Jyoti Basu went to the extent of calling him a madman. Why? Because he was trying to introduce having a photo identity card for all voters. Jyoti Basu said, no, it is not possible. West Bengal is such a varied state. India is such a varied country, etc., etc. But Sheshan forced it. It is not as if these photo identity cards cannot be forged or they cannot be otherwise compromised, but to some extent this has been this has set things right. Apart from that, in the preparation of the polling lists, the electoral rolls, there is an enormous amount of fraud. As you rightly pointed out, a lot of Rohingyas have got their names in. A lot of infiltrators, other Bangladeshi infiltrators have got their names in. On the other hand, a lot of Hindus who have fled religious persecution in Bangladesh and have entered India because of that reason, and who ought to become citizens by application of the Citizenship Amendment Act. Their names are not there, and these roles are prepared by the state government employees who are detailed for this job. This is one of the things that is that ought to worry every patriotic party, every patriotic citizen of the state. I don't know what is actually going to be done about it. Don't know yet, that is.
So, viewers, we are coming to an end of the broader Q&A session with Dr. Roy, and we'll be taking a few questions. I think we might be able to allow maybe 5 or so, and I think we've already got that many questions. So, thank you for your questions, and we are going to try and address each and every one of those things. Dr. Roy, the next question is,
Yes.
we have lost count of the corruption scams out there. And
Yeah.
every day there is a new scam that's coming up in West Bengal. I mean,
Yes.
this is not something that's unusual. You know, you have many states having these kinds of problems. Kerala is another one. What are the biggest scams today, or do scams or does corruption create an emotion in the voter that they would like to see less of it and more of governance?
Answer is yes and no. People in this country, to some extent, have got accustomed to corruption. But that is not to say that the corruption doesn't move them. Rajiv Gandhi lost his seat after being elected prime minister with a record majority. Rajiv Gandhi lost his position in 1989 because of the Bofors scandal. When the CPM was booted out of West Bengal, the image of Mamata Banerjee as a corruption-free person had its own effect. But it goes only so far. It goes only so far. So many people have an impression that they are all the same, politicians of all hues across this divide, across that divide. It makes no difference. So corruption is a factor. It's not the only factor, but there are other things which have brought a huge amount of discredit to Mamata Banerjee's government. One is unemployment and deindustrialization of the state. In 2000, just before getting elected in 2011, she had said that in 6 months I shall reindustrialize this state. 10 years have passed. As opposed to 6 months, nothing much has been done, and the state continues to remain what it is. And the proof of that is in the large number of labor, the migrant labor, that wanted to come back to West Bengal when this corona scare started. Mamata Banerjee tried to stop it. She said that these are Corona Express, these are people who are bringing in Corona, I shall not let them come. But she couldn't stop them because there was so much popular pressure. Now, the fact that so many people have gone out of the state, a state where people used to come in from the neighboring impoverished states of Bihar, Odisha, and UP, proves to what extent the state has been deindustrialized and to what extent the unemployment is a problem. So that is a very big thing. Muslim appeasement is a very big thing in West Bengal, and that is one of the things that may affect Mamata Banerjee's electoral fortunes. You see, the way she has been buttoning up the Muslim minority is just not funny. And it is apparent. I mean, it is, people can see it on the surface. I mean, on the uh, Muslims have suddenly in this state have suddenly become extremely assertive of their identity. It is not as if there were no Muslims in Kolkata. But lately, if you go around Kolkata, you will find a very large number of Muslim women wearing burqas or covering their faces. Right now, everybody covers their faces because of this corona scare. But Muslim women were covering their faces even before this corona scare started. So these are things that will affect Mamata Banerjee's fortunes. She is trying to do this she is trying to combat this by uh, tricks of the trade, like the sort of things that Mr. Prashant Kishore has been brought in to suggest at a price of 500 crores, as we have been told. But a person whom I will not name, but who is politically very, very conscious and is in a very, very responsible position, he told me something which is deserving of attention. He says, look, you can hire an event manager. The event manager may make sure that the Shamiana is wonderful. He may make sure that the invitations have gone out to everyone and with proper care they have been invited, etc. He may make sure that the food to be served in the wedding is going to be top class, but he can't bring people. People will have to come of their own. And therefore, it is his impression that Prashanta Kishore's uh, advice or action upon his advice will go only so far. So this is the situation in West Bengal.
Well, sir, that was a very revealing talk. And since you are still taking time to settle down, perhaps in our next conversation about West Bengal, we'll have a more nuanced look at the voter trends and patterns and so on and so forth. So, with your permission, now I'd like to go to the questions that our viewers have for you.
Please
Um,
do.
First question is from Ankit Sharma. He says, Sir, please guide us on how we can help on this issue. I think he is talking about the illegal migration into West Bengal.
See, now, one thing that I can suggest, and I am myself into it in quite a big way, that is use of the social media. I have never seen the mainstream media in West Bengal so compromised, so subservient as they are now. You know, there is a paper whose whose founder editor was a very courageous man, And he used to publicly say that we are not scared of anyone except God. Now that paper, you should read it. It reads like a party organ. Unspeakable. That editor is dead. And then after that, it passed on to other hands, undeserving hands, I must say. And that paper now reads like a party organ. The paper which justifiably could say that we are scared only of God, no one else. Other papers, including Bengali editions of All India papers, have followed suit. There is only one paper, which is one paper and one TV channel, which is saying things against Mamata. That is not to say that whatever they are saying is God's truth, but they are saying it. They are saying it. No one else is saying it. There is certainly some truth in it. The other papers, the other TV channels, they are all whitewashing it. So this is a problem that West Bengal is facing. And the only way we can combat this problem is through social media, particularly Facebook. I am very active on Twitter, but I am told that Twitter reaches only an elite section of society. Uh, so I ought to go more actively on Facebook. It is not as if I don't participate in Facebook. I do, but I have been advised that I ought to go more actively into Facebook. Uh, to answer the question of this gentleman, Ankit, I appreciate his concern. And what I would say is that um, it has got to be done at party level. It just can't be done like that. To if you take a page of what the CPIM used to do, the CPIM in 1977, they were a totally cornered party. Between 1972 and 1977, the government was in the hands of Congress, and there was this emergency between 1975 and 77. And as a result of that, CPI was totally cornered. But in spite of everything, in 77, they came romping with a huge absolute majority. How did it happen? It happened because they formed small groups, and because they knew that if they tried to organize big public meetings, they will be hooted, they will be beaten up, they will be thrown into jail by the Congress government. So what they did is, at that time they had a very dedicated bunch of party people, which is not what they had in 2011. This dedicated bunch of party people, they fanned out all over the state and they cornered people. They held small meetings of 10, 15, 20 people and talked to them. And the word got around. This was one of the things. Second thing they did was the whisper camping. Say, for instance, they did it in such a coordinated, such a skillful manner that, except for the uh, ultimate uh, evil intention, this is something that is deserving of appreciation. I'll give you just one example, which they themselves have admitted. You see, between 1962 and 67, West Bengal had a chief minister called Prafulla Chandra Sen. Prafulla Chandra Sen was a true Gandhian. He was a very bad administrator. And he was totally innocent of the skill that is required to run administration in a state like West Bengal. But he was honest as honest can be. He was a true Gandhian, and Gandhian in the best possible sense. Now, this Prafulla Chandra Sen, we all know, died in penury. But at some stage, when he was the chief minister, this communist started a whisper campaign that he had bought the Stephen House. Stephen House is a huge a huge building housing a very large number of offices in the center of the city near BBD Bagh or Dalhousie Square. And this started making the rounds. They started doing it by whispering it in public transport. So it happened like this, that I remember at that time I was in college. I asked my father that, have you heard that PC San has purchased Stephen House? My father said, yes, yes, I have also heard such a thing. So when you hear something from two different sources, it automatically sinks into your consciousness and you become kind of convinced. This is the kind of thing that they did. I am not saying that we follow this kind of uh, despicable methods, but we've got to reach across to the people and we've got to speak to the people. Right now we have a handicap in the form of this COVID-19, but we've got to speak to the people and we've got to convince them of the situation that Mamata Banerjee has created in this state in the shape of unemployment, corruption, Muslim appeasement, and a whole lot of other things.
Thank you, sir. The next question is from Yogesh Dubey. What
Yes.
are the chances of BJP winning in West Bengal in 2021?
Chances are good. That is all that I can say. But Mamata Banerjee is not to be underestimated as an adversary. See, there is a leftist orientation in the minds of the people in this state. It is wearing off. It had happened because the cultural and literary field in this state had been left vacant by the Congress. And the communists had entered this field and altered, tailored the value system of the people, making them pro-poverty, not anti-poverty, pro-poverty, anti-prosperity, that kind of thing. These things help Mamata Banerjee. And this has got to be combated. The problem has got to be understood in its entirety, in its depth, and an antidote has to be devised for it. A scheme of what the party plans to do if voted to power has also got to be framed and put across to people. If these things are done with the necessary skill, I am fairly sure that BJP will come to power because the disgust of the people with the present government is unfathomable, enormous.
Sir, the next question is from Bharat Ved Prakash. Is NRC an answer to the Bengali demographic change? If yes, do you believe the central government will be bold enough to push it after the CAA protests?
CAA protests are motivated. I mean, they are politically engineered. So there is no reason why the central government should not be able to push it through. And we've got a very, very courageous Prime Minister at the helm of affairs. Also a very courageous Home Minister. So I hope that it will be possible to push through both the NRC and the CAA. So far as I am concerned, so far as West Bengal is concerned, I think the CAA is more important and the benefits of CAA must be brought to the people. But NRC is also required.
Sir, the next question is from Pratik Patil. Do you see a population exchange in the future, or do you see some sort of a civil war where the thing is 50-50 kind of thing, demographic?
Population exchange is out now. As far as I can see, I cannot foresee any such thing. It is something that could have been, should have been done back in the late 1940s and very early 1950s. Dr. Shyam Prasad Mukherjee advocated it. It happened in Punjab. Almost fully the Indian Punjab, with the exception of one place called Malerkotla, was totally rid of Muslims. And Pakistani Punjab was totally rid of Hindus and Sikhs. So, with the result that the refugees coming from Pakistan, Hindu and Sikh refugees coming from Pakistan were not as badly off as the Hindu refugees who were coming from East Bengal. Shyama Prasad Mukherjee advocated it. He said so even on the floor of the parliament, in spite of his being a minister. But Nehru said, no, it is a matter of faith that these Muslims have chosen to live in India, and um, we cannot make a breach of faith by driving them away to Pakistan. They have consciously voted by living in India, which is nonsense. Nobody wants to leave his home and earth if given the choice. Do you think the Bengalis, Hindus of East Bengal would not have liked to stay on in East Bengal if they had been given a choice? All of them would have liked to stay back, but they didn't. They couldn't because they were driven out by brute force, by murder, rape, arson, every possible thing.
Next.
So today, exchange of population is out. Civil war, very unwelcome possibility, but not impossible. I'm very, very sorry to say that it is not impossible at some future date. It's not going to happen in 5 years, 10 years, but at some future date, it is not impossible.
Sir, the next question kind of dovetails into it nicely. Diva wants to know, will biometric scanners during the voting reduce corruption at the booth?
Oh, certainly it will. Certainly it will. In fact, biometrics have made a difference already. I think scanners or more advanced equipment will certainly make a difference.
Thank you, sir. The last two questions. Viewers,
Yeah.
we are done taking questions now. Sanjeev Biswas wants to know, will
Mhm.
Tathagata Da join active BJP politics?
Yes, I have already made a public declaration that I want to join active BJP politics. I have already become a primary member. I have applied to become a active member. I believe that it is on the anvil under consideration of the state BJP. I have also been advised uh, by the central observer of the state BJP to see the central leaders. Unfortunately, because of this COVID thing, everything has gone topsy turvy, and I have not been able to see any of them so far. I plan to see them very shortly. It's just been 2 weeks that I have come here. In about a month, I expect to be in the thick of politics.
Thank you, sir. The last question. Abhirup Bhattacharjee wants to know, what is BJP's plan to industrialize the state if they come to power?
I don't know what is BJP's plan. I can tell you what my plan is. If
Please
I
go ahead, sir.
am if I am given the choice of drafting a plan, I will make the state as attractive as possible to industrialists. And in order to do that, we've got to take some very hard decisions. We've got to realize that the state, as it stands today, is extremely unattractive. Kolkata is an unattractive city, full of squalor. Footpaths don't, that is, pavements don't exist. They've been taken over by hawkers. Many of these hawkers are actually Pakistanis. The roads are in a state of disrepair. The roads across the state are not much better. The biggest problem in the state so far, which is Mamata's pet thing, is the problem of land allocation. She won this election on the, she zeroed in on this single issue by saying that fertile land cannot be given for industrialization. Most of the land in West Bengal is fertile. There is very little fallow land in West Bengal. So where will industries be founded? They will not be founded on the sky. So you have got to take some land. The only thing you've got to do is to compensate the owners of that land adequately so that they don't have a huge grouse for having lost that land. If it is possible, their kin can also be offered employment in the upcoming industry, but only if it is possible. Only that choice must be given to the entrepreneur. Things like says that is special economic zone, which Mamata Banerjee has effectively ruled out, must be done, must be put here. Says is an essential part of the industrialization of a state. Urban Land Ceiling Act, which has been done away with by most of the states, must also be done away with in West Bengal. And the infrastructure must improve. The infrastructure, I'll just give you one example. National Highway number 34 is literally the spine of the state. It connects the southernmost part of the state to the northernmost part and runs right through the length of the state. This National Highway number 34 is woefully inadequate to carry its traffic. And in the rainy season, it gets thoroughly damaged. This has immediately got to be made into a 4-lane road right through, and if possible, a 6-lane road. For that, land is required to be taken. And if land is to be taken, it must be taken. There also must be plans for urban renewal. Kolkata has very unfortunate land use. Very expensive land, very sort of land which is very fortunately located. Such pieces of land are occupied by minimal dwellings. These people have got to be rehabilitated and the land put to good use. These are just some of the ideas that had come to me at different points of time, and I'm just putting them across. But I'm making it plain that these are not part of the scheme of the party. As a matter of fact, as I said, that because I have come to the party only 2 weeks back, I come to the state only 2 weeks back, I'm not quite aware of what the party is thinking about it. And perhaps I'll get to know eventually.
Thank you very much, sir. You have indeed come on the radar of all politicians now that you are on PGurus. PGurus commands a very loyal following, amongst them the pushers and shakers and movers of the political system in India and abroad, I might say. So thank you very much on your new journey that you have embarked on, Dr. Roy. And once again, thank you very much for joining our hangout. And we'll be back with you talking about many such substantive issues. Namaskar.
Thank you. Namaskar.